Now the war is not over, victory isn't won, but we'll fight on to the finish, and then when it's all done, we'll cry glory, oh glory.
For me, I was born in the UK, but I lived 7 years of my life in Nigeria. From the age of 6 to 13, I lived in Lagos, and now I've lived in America for almost 8 years now. And so those are very, very different cultures in which to live as a black man. Nigeria being very formative for me because it's been a hugely precious experience for me to live in a country where I was not a minority. It eroded any residue of a minority mentality from me. So I culturally now feel able, having experienced living in a country where you can't tell Nigerians nothing. I mean, like literally, if you are poor and on the street, I am a king. What are you going to tell me about that? So to live in a culture where that is a truism, and to carry that in cultures in Europe and America where racism is real, marginalization on the basis of color is real, but like Dr. King, somehow to not have the bitterness or the anger that makes that a self-fulfilling prophecy, that means, it's what I call the Sidney Poitier syndrome. He achieved what he did the way he did at the time he did because he grew up in a culture where he wasn't a minority. So when he went to America and anyone said to him, no, we're not going to give you that opportunity, he was like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to ask you for it, I'm going to take it. And that's why he achieved what he did when he did. And so from a cultural intelligence point of view, I think for me, that equipped me in terms of playing an African American who transcended anger and bitterness and was effective because he knew from God that he was equal to every man because that's how God saw him. And so therefore that's how he saw the world, and that's therefore what he campaigned for.
What was it like to act out such important moments in history? What was it like?
It was a heavy burden, is the truth of the matter. Because acting out historical moments was one thing. The thing that really stayed with me was having entered into this endeavor to feel momentarily, I'm an actor, I'm not Dr. King, but to feel momentarily because you have to place yourself emotionally into his shoes and to feel the weight of what that must have felt like, even if it was for two or 3 months, to be on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the actual bridge where these events took place, where Bloody Sunday took place, which you're about to see, with some of the people who engaged in that march, to give a speech on the Capitol steps, where he was told if he gives that speech, he will be assassinated, and he gave it anyway. To give that speech at the very same pulpit from which he gave that speech from. The pulpit, you'll see in the film, was found 2 days before we went there to shoot, and was offered to us. It hadn't been used for decades. Hey, how you doing? Where's my former teacher? Oh my goodness. That's really weird. Okay, now I suddenly feel like I need to straighten my tie. I know, my teacher. Wow, amazing to see you. So that's thrown me. I have no idea what I was talking about. But yes, it was, that was the thing for me, was just how humbling it was to feel the weight of what it must have been like, and to know that I'm entering it only momentarily, and to know that I couldn't have done what he did.
Thank you. How key is it for people in the US and here in the UK to learn about the past and understand what rights were fought for back in 1965? How key?
It's incredibly important for all of us. I think when you look at what's going on in America right now, you look at Ferguson, you look at what just happened with Eric Garner, you see these protests that are going on. I think if you were born after 1965 and didn't necessarily know about Selma, you may think we are in a new day. You may think that this is new. Well, when you see Selma now, you'll see that there are images you're about to see that are very evocative of what's just going on in America right now. In Selma, one of the strategies employed was to go into places where racism was very real, make sure the press was present, have them provoked to action in front of the camera to, do what they do behind closed doors for the world to see, and amplify that to the world and say, we need help. That's what happened at Bloody Sunday. 70 million people in America saw those images, and they made their voices heard, and within months of seeing those images, the law was changed. Recently, we saw Eric Garner killed on screen. You think that those images are going to have the same effect. They didn't. That man wasn't even indicted. And so, to sink into a kind of apathy that governmentally things are just going to be all right, it's just a lie. We as the people need to have our voices heard, and you will see in Selma that was done in a very strategic, intelligent, articulate way, and that's something that we just need to continue to do.
Thank you. David, is there a call to action for people who watch this film? What impact do you want it to have?
I think the danger with a film like this is to think that we all have to go out and be Dr. King. He was... why are you laughing? Well, you don't want to be Dr. King? No, he was a once-in-a-generation individual, like Mandela, like Gandhi. But what his life shows, and you'll see when you see the film, one of my biggest jobs was to show that he was a human being, not a saint. Even though we have deified him because of what he did, he didn't walk on this earth thinking of himself as an icon. And certainly he had weaknesses, he had times where he was unsure. He made sure he surrounded himself with people who he could rely on because he was a human being. But he did it anyway. And I think that within our own families, within our own communities, to exhibit sacrificial love truly, is one of the most powerful, healing, nourishing things each and every one of us can do. And I think cumulatively, to a certain degree, Dr. King's dream will be realized if indeed we do that.
Thank you. David, there has been some criticism that the film does not stick accurately to historical fact, such as the representation of certain characters. What is your reaction to this?
People often ask me, why has it taken so long for a king about Dr. King to be made? This is the very first time a film about him, where he's the center of the story, has been made. And it's because in the past, stories about civil rights, stories that have a big canvas like this, have often been told. Hollywood has felt a need to tell those stories through white characters, white protagonists. I think the idea is because in order to allay white guilt over issues of slavery and civil rights, you have a white character who is a very nice, heroic white person who holds black people's hands through their own destiny and to their own salvation. I love white people, by the way. I'm married to one, so don't worry. But that's been the case in the past. What you have in this film I think this so-called concocted controversy is basically you have a film about Dr. King, and so certain people want the film to be about LBJ. It's not about LBJ, sorry.
Selma is due to be released on the 6th of February. Do you expect it to capture the imagination of people here in the UK?
I certainly hope it does. We didn't make it just for America. Martin Luther King is a transcendent world figure. I think what he represents and who he was is applicable to every and any country in which there is social unrest, racial inequality, where the potency of love is needed because there is hate, where there is injustice. And I think, like Jesus, who he followed, his message was universal and it transcended country lines. And so that's certainly my hope.
Would you like viewers to come away and think of ways they can make the world a better place for everyone?
No. Absolutely, of course. I mean, I have set myself a remit that the films I do, I want them to be edifying. I want them to be synonymous and in line with what I teach my 4 children about being a responsible citizen of the planet. And I think to see not just Dr. King, not just this man, but to see this movement and how not just this movement, but black and white, young and old, people of all faiths came together to make injustice against black people not a black problem, but a human problem, and to see that demonstration of solidarity lead to the law being changed. That's an incredible thing that did happen and is in this movie, and hopefully is an encouragement to all of us of how we can be.
Right. One of the stars, Cuba, Golden Jr., who stars in the film, said it was about people working together for good. Do you think that is a philosophy for making other changes in the world?
The Bible says 1 will put 1,000 to flight, 2 will put 10,000 to flight, and I've seen that be the case. We can achieve so much more together than on our own, and so many of the issues, so many of the problems the world faces, I think, are perpetuated by apathy. They're perpetuated by us saying, well, that's not my problem, and so therefore I'm just going to turn a blind eye and let it happen. But if, again, as Jesus advocated, if greater love hath no man than to lay his life down for his friend, if we were all operating in that, the world would just simply be a different place, I think. And so that's what this movement represented, and that's why I think it was effective.
I'm a pastor of the church, Tooting Junction Baptist Church. We've got lots of young people, and we do a lot of videoing, filming, and we've got a drama ministry, and that's going very well.
I'm not going to be in it.
Yeah, I know. What advice will you have for, I can see some of them there, I can see some of the young stars there, and many others who would like to be like you. What advice do you have for them?
The difference between good and great is hard work. What I do is a craft. It's, I trained to do it. A lot of hard work goes into doing it. In the age of celebrity, it's very easy to think, well, I'm good looking and I was really good in that school play, so, that's not going to cut it. It's just too competitive of a profession, and you will get found out. So, for anyone who's serious being an actor. I would say, you know, you're in Great Britain. I mean, it's one of the best countries in the world for training as an actor. The reason why I get to go to America and play Dr. King as opposed to American doing that is because of the training we have in this country. It's second to none. It means we go over there and we steal all the jobs in you. If a bomb went off in this church right now, man, that would be it, you know. But anyway, I will talk about that later. But you know, that's the difference. I think is hard work.
Who's your favorite actor? Or who was and who is your favorite actor?
My favorite actor is actually an actor I got to act opposite, and that's Daniel Day-Lewis. I was in a film Lincoln, and I'm in the first scene of that film. And you want to talk about the divinity of God. You want to talk about destiny. God told me I was going to play this role in 2007. And then I got this role in Lincoln, where I effectively play a pre-incarnate version of Dr. King. I stand before Lincoln and I say, in 1865, maybe one day we'll get the vote. 100 years later, almost to the day, 1965, the film you're about to see, with the very same actor who is stood next to me in the scene I have with Daniel Day-Lewis, Coleman Domingo, who is now playing Ralph Abernathy in Selma. We are sat in a prison cell together going, I don't know, maybe we don't get the vote. 100 years later, 19 presidents on, if that doesn't typify how much of a long struggle this was, simply by seeing the same two actors depicting that, I don't know what does. But you know, when I watched him inhabiting Lincoln in that film, it gave me what I feel is the blueprint of how to play Dr. King.
What's the best role and the worst role in the film that you had to take on?
The best role in a film and the worst role I've ever had in a film. Well, I mean, it may seem simplistic, but the best role is, without doubt, playing Dr. King in Selma. The worst role in the film? Oh gosh, I don't really like taking bad roles. I tend to turn them down. But I tell you one of the worst experiences I ever had. I remember auditioning for a director. This is for the young actors. Be prepared for some pretty painful experiences. I remember going in to audition for a director, and I worked on my scene, and I was doing my scene, and he went, stop, stop. This just isn't working, is it? What do you mean? He went, just go from the top, just do it again. Started doing it again, stop. You're just not him, are you? And I'm a very determined person, so I was like, just give me one more go. I go into the scene again, stop! It's been really nice meeting you. I get to play Dr. King.
You know, the power in the spirit. Jesus being a role model for you. I think that's really, really inspiring. I think for many of us who are Christians, I think we really love the way you put out it. And to say that you were inspired by God to play this role, I think that's awesome. Do you just want to do a little bit of American accent for us? Quickly, before we round up, in this film, from this film.
You're about to watch 2 hours and 7 minutes. This guy. I thought you said you were culturally intelligent.
Oliver Stone was planning a Martin Luther King film. Do you know what happened to that project? Has it morphed into this one, or is this a totally original screenplay entry?
Between the time when I felt God tell me I was going to play Dr. King in this film, Steven Spielberg was going to make a version at one point, Oliver Stone was going to make a version at one point, Paul Greengrass was going to make a version at one point, all of which would have blown this one out of the water, all of which at different points looked like they were going. And at every time one of those films was announced, in my head was, Lord, did I hear you right? Because I don't think this is going to happen. And here we are. So, you know, it's, God uses the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. The fact that a British actor from Islington gets to play Dr. King when all of those heavyweights at different points were going to do it and would definitely not have hired me to do it. The fact that the very first director who was on board to direct this film, who I auditioned for in 2007, rejected me. And then, cut to 2014, I ended up recommending the lady who went on to direct the film, is really evidence of God just smiling down, going, see? Just trust and obey.
What was it like working with Oprah?
She's a real troublesome individual. No, she's the reason this film actually happened. I mean, I had the privilege of playing her son in The Butler, and while we were doing that film, I shared with her my passion to play Dr. King. She's a huge student of the civil rights movement. I showed her an audition I had done on my iPhone. She saw it and said, "It's good. If you play this, you're going to have to go deeper, but I can see it. I feel you're called to do this, and I'm going to do everything I can to help you get there." Not to be one to look a gift horse in the mouth. When Ava DuVernay boarded the film and rewrote the script, I went to her and said, "I'm going to take you up on that favor." She came on board as a producer, and that was literally the pumpy on which the film got made. So I like her.
You mentioned earlier working with Ava DuVernay, and it's your second movie, and you're going to do a third one apparently. It's just been announced. So can you talk about the partnership between you two? Because I think it's brilliant.
She's a truly brilliant director. You know, I hope that's what you feel having watched the film. And the thing about her that I really love, look, one of the things that inspired me to do movies was the early work of Spike Lee. Just a very unique voice. And I met Ava, again, the God in all of this. I met Ava because I sat on a plane next to a guy who was watching Spooks on his iPad. And he turned to me and he paused it and said, "Is this you I'm watching on my iPad?" I said, "Oh, yeah, that is me." And he said, "Okay, well, you're an actor, so is it a good idea to invest in movies?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "A friend of mine has just asked me to put $50,000 into this small film called Middle of Nowhere." I said, "Well, tell me more about it." He told me about it. I said, "Well, let me read the script and I'll tell you what I think." He gave me the script. It was Ava DuVernay's second film. I read the script, blew me away, reminded me of early work of Spike Lee. Got off the plane having read it, phoned her up, said, "I need to be in your movie." And she said, "Oh my goodness, you were on my shortlist for this, but I just never thought you would do a $200,000 movie." I said, "Well, you were wrong." So we did that film together. She ended up winning Best Director at Sundance for it. She and I forged a great friendship. And when Lee Daniels, who actually cast me in Selma, moved on, I was able to recommend her to be the one to direct it. And the reason I recommended her is because to have a female perspective on this story, I think is fantastic. Because the temptation, and not, male directors are pretty great. I've worked with some great ones, but the thing she brings, and you'll see it when you see this film, there's so much humanity. You'll see it in the female characters, you'll see it in the emotion in the film, you'll see it in the way that she deals with violence. It's a different lens than a male perspective, and I just always, and look, to have a black female director direct this film, to see Oprah Winfrey and Ava DuVernay behind the monitor while we were doing this film, to me, is definitely a piece of Dr. Martin Luther King's dream.
Now the